Life Assurance Society of Oklahoma of the United States, HTB, the NAACP Youth Council, Tinker Credit Union, Allstate Insurance Agents, Harold Ford and Marilyn Hildreth, Oscar Rose Junior College, the Community Action Programs, George Keys, York County Assessor. And George Keys say, when you come to the Soul Bazaar, be sure and stop by his booth because he wants to personally talk to you. Safeways, Behold the Walls, Miss Black, Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City Police Department, Medical Center State Bank, the Department of Human Resources, the Urban League, Mickey, it was your representative, the 23rd Street Pro Boxing Show, Bob Moore Cadillac, the Black Chronicle, Baha'is Church Group, American Rent-A-Car, E. Melvin Porter, Haywood Hill Carpet Company, the Home Furniture Company, Human Rights Commission, Mrs. Ela Asher and Nicolima International, Oklahoma University, the Community of Education and Recreation with Mr. Williams, Central State University, Mr. Anthony Crosby, your candidate for state representative, the Honorable Tom Daxon, Governor George Nye, and Ken's latest wear. Those are just some of the exhibitors that will be at Soul Bazaar 82. I have a lovely young lady here who is a contestant for Miss Soul Bazaar. And what is your name?
Gloria Fulmer.
Gloria, do you want to invite everyone out there to come to Soul Bazaar 82?
Yes, I would.
Okay, well, do it.
I would like for everyone in the public of Oklahoma City to come down and join us at the 1982 Miss Soul Bazaar.
Where are you in school?
Star Spencer High School.
Thank you. And now I have another young lady, and what is your name?
Trondra Williams.
Trondra, where are you in school?
Capitol Hill High School.
Would you like to invite the people to Soul Bazaar 82?
I'd like to invite everybody to Soul Bazaar 82.
And thank you. And then I have another beautiful contestant, and your name?
Trina Smith.
And Trina, where are you in school?
Douglas High School.
What would you like to do? What would you like to do today? Would you like to invite all of them?
I would like to invite everybody to come on down to the 1982 Soul Bazaar.
Okay, well, I would like to wish all of you good luck, and you'll be back next week, and we will talk to you in details. In the year 1974, I was the editor of the America's Voices magazine. At that time, Archibald Hill made the front cover of that magazine. And in 1974, I picked up my pen, and these are the words that I wrote. I called Archibald Hill the amazing Archibald Hill Jr. Archibald Hill Jr. has a self-assurance of a man who has just completed $1 million deal with an experienced businessman and had received the better part of the bargain. Seated behind his huge mahogany desk in the Mark Twain building, the first of his race to occupy office space in the building, he obliged with a sincere example of the supreme confidence he had in his own wisdom and abilities. Yes, I'm running for the Secretary of State in the state of Oklahoma. There are thousands of people in Oklahoma that will vote for me, and I'm going to win. Coming from Archibald Hill Jr., the statement is not surprising and cannot be underestimated. Indeed, it is almost expected. But Archibald Hill Jr., a successful lawyer, former member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, Oklahoma's first black assistant majority House of Representative floor leader, an AME trustee and lecturer, has, under unpredictable circumstances, altered the course of history. Circumstances, obstacles, only Archibald Hill Jr. and God knows his experiences. He is never anxious to take anything at face value. The more he is challenged during an argument, the stronger he becomes, reminded one of a lawyer at an old-fashioned town meeting. He seems to radiate sincerity, and his sharp tone implies that something must be done immediately. He loved the aged and speaks to them with a great deal of passionate understanding. He speaks to young people often and establishes cases for education as if ignorance has brought a suit against education, and always would leave the audience to decide the verdict. After one of his dynamic addresses, a youth in a local school that had been branded as a slow learner said, "I'm through with ignorance. I've got to get an education." Archibald Hill Jr.'s message to young people is simple and cemented with what he calls everyday common sense. He bluntly expresses opinions which many of the young find provoking and challenging. He tells young people, don't let nobody discourage you. This is your country. And you can't have rights unless you have enough education to know that you have rights. Don't you know that education is an airplane that will place you safely and secure in opportunity's arms? No one is going to feel sorry for you with all of the opportunities that are available today. Archibald Hill is one of the few black men in public life who comes from a long line of professional educators. His father was a professional educator, and his mother was a banker. His grandfather was an educator, and 3 schools in Georgia are named after his grandfather. His uncle, Archibald Carey, was an alderman. He was a distinguished Chicago judge. His mother, Mrs. Juanita P. Hill, is an aggressive, beautiful champion of love who was able to squeeze success out of her son and employees with the ease of a French cook. Her youth and beauty stood out to such an extent that she was often referred to as Archie's pretty sister, the type of external and internal beauty that gives dignity to motherhood. If Archibald Hill Jr. wants to credit his success to fate, few will argue with him. But it is obvious that he has talent and brains working for him. He never finished high school. He was admitted to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia in the 11th grade as a participant in a Ford Foundation program for gifted children. He was small in size, but a giant on the debate team, on the Tiger staff, and was a super tennis player. He called Dr. Benjamin Mays of Morehouse College the greatest educator of the 20th century. He graduated from Morehouse College, and because of his successful Uncle Archie, as he fondly called him, he decided to become a lawyer and entered North Carolina Central University in Durham. While there, he became the first black to represent North Carolina State University in a mock court competition, leaving North Carolina with a law degree in one hand and a beautiful, shy bride named Lovey on the other hand. The big city of Chicago beckoned him. Arriving in Chicago, observing his uncle as a magnetic political figure, deciding politics were not his thing, so he set out on his own. I don't want to be Archibald Hill Sr.'s little shadow, nor my uncle's lawyer. I want to make it on my own. So he started west to find his fortune. After accepting a job with the Golden State Insurance Company in Los Angeles, where he had been hired by telephone. As he headed down Highway 66 with his radio blasting, he heard Clara Luper and a group of little children have just been arrested. Who in the hell is Clara Luper, and why children? Where are the lawyers, the preachers? From station to station, he turned his dial. Clara Luper and a group of children arrested. What's wrong? I'm on my way to California. Here I am. I'm on my way to California. And Clara Luper and a bunch of little children are in jail for me. I know what I will do. I will stop in Oklahoma to see a former classmate of mine. Napoleon Johnson is in Oklahoma City, a Morehouse graduate. He's working for the Urban League, and his car turned off of Highway 66 into Oklahoma City. He immediately found the sit-inners at John A. Brown's store and found that he could not leave the sit-inners. So he began plying new fields of civil rights activities and became deeply involved in the sit-in movement in Oklahoma City. His legal ability added a strong plank in the struggle here. It was here that he met Melvin Porter, who became closely associated, and he still brags about the help that attorney E. Melvin Porter and attorney Amos Hall gave him. Attorney Porter, I've invited you here today because of that story that I wrote on Archibald Hill in 1974. Tell me about when you met Archibald Hill.
Mrs. Luper, I met Archibald Hill in 1974, and he was, well, it was earlier than 1974. I met Archibald in the 1960s. He was, I just can't describe his personality. He radiated with confidence. He was sure of where he was going, what he was going to do. And as your story indicated, he stayed in Oklahoma because he felt that he could make some contribution to the struggle for black people here, and that contribution he made. He made it in Lawton, he made it in Tulsa, he made it in Oklahoma City, he made it all over the state. He was president of led the civil rights movement in the city of Lawton. He bucked great odds. He fought the power system. I can remember when President Kennedy was coming to Lawton and the town tried to get Archie not to carry the protest movement on. He bucked the power structure. He carried it on. He faced every adversity with confidence that he could succeed. They tried to prosecute him for illegally voting in Lawton. He won that. They tried many things to discourage him and force him out of Oklahoma. He resisted that. He was a champion of people. He loved people. He fought for people. He believed in people.
I know on the cases that were tried here in Oklahoma City, the Cravens case, what role did Archibald Hill play in that case?
Well, that was a lawsuit where the NAACP Youth Council was, an injunction was filed in the district court, and Bob Carter and Amos Hall came down and assisted Archibald and myself in the trial of that case. He was a lawyer. Not only was he a lawyer, he was an active participant. He not only defended, but he also joined the ranks of those who protested. And his voice, his counsel, his body will be missed from this earth, but I'm confident that his spirit and the legacy that he left us, the legacy of confidence and of fight and of compassion, will remain with us and guide us as we move through this life.
When you spoke of Lawton, once again I thought about what I had written in 1974. You remember when Archibald Hill went to Lawton, they were in need of a black lawyer, and he went there. He called it a 20th century town with a 17th century leaders and ideas. He found in Lawton that blacks were completely segregated, in spite of the fact that Fort Sill was there. And from Fort Sill, men were going to fight for democracy all over the world. And in Lawton, black women couldn't try on dresses in department stores. I would like to quote directly from Archibald. "Man, Lawton, Oklahoma is Jim Crow's headquarters, and we've got to do something." And he did something in Lawton, didn't he, Senator?
Yes, he did, Mrs. Luper. The story of his contribution to the civil rights movement in Lawton has never really been told. He suffered. I can remember when Western Union would not even permit him to send a telegram. Banks would not cash insurance company checks. The hate and the anger that the white community put to him never turned him around and never discouraged him. He was a true champion. He was a true fighter. He left the city of Lawton and came here to Oklahoma and picked up the mantle of that fight. And he worked with CORE and with the NAACP. And as I said, his contribution to the struggle here as a young man from the state of Georgia who stopped here by accident is one that will always be remembered and certainly will always be cherished by everyone who knew him.
I was particularly impressed with the voters registration drive that he put on in Lawton. He immediately checked that when he arrived in Lawton and found that there was not even a black postman in Lawton. He reorganized the NAACP, which had 16 active members, and increased the membership within a month to 125. He called this a shot in the arm and registered over 3,000 new voters. Archibald Hill in Lawton, Oklahoma. But as you have told the audience, he came back to Oklahoma City. He organized CORE, and he became involved in everything that meant progress. He looked like Chief Justice John Marshall with a suntan, and he acted like Frederick Douglass. His vocabulary would explode like a tornado when he started talking, and he would name Uncle Toms one by one. He would name black Uncle Toms, and then he would name white Uncle Toms. And during this time, Senator E. Melvin Porter, you and Archibald Hill got into some strong fights. Tell me about them.
Well, you're talking about the fights with the civil rights movement?
Yes.
Mrs. Luper, I can remember when Roland Betts and the gentleman from the SCLC came to Oklahoma, and we had many of the great struggles, and I can remember when we were up in the city jail, and we confronted the police chief, Weldon Davis, about much of the treatment that blacks were receiving. And Roland Betts made this comment as he was locked up behind the bars, that I have never in my life seen anyone as fearless of a system, as fearless of a police department, as fearless of guns and dogs and everything else. I've never, and I participated in sit-in movements across this country, I've never seen anyone that had the personality and the strength of what I've seen here in Oklahoma. And Archibald Hill was a great part of that strength and a great part of that personality. He, as you said, he was an articulate lawyer. He was a brainy lawyer. He was one of the best trial lawyers I have ever met. I think that Amos Hall surely has to feel proud of what role he played in the advantages and the opportunities that he confronted and gave Archibald Hill and myself and many other young lawyers in this city. And then Archibald repaid that debt. He repaid it because at his death, there were two young lawyers in his office, Mr. Brown and Mr. Ho, both of whom he afforded the opportunity so they could become active participants in the legal profession.
This is a Clara Luper radio show, KAEZ Radio in Oklahoma City. We would like to thank our sponsors for the time today to dedicate this program to the memory of Archibald Hill and to give you some thanks. Today all over Oklahoma City, black people went into what used to be all white restaurants, and they did it because of the dedication and the leadership of an Archibald Hill. Now, part of the Oklahoma City sanitation strike is something that we must talk about. And there are many memories of that strike and the memories of Archibald Hill. I never shall forget the day we were in the basement of the St. John's Baptist Church. Archibald's life had been threatened. They had shot at his car, and his car windows were bullet holes everywhere. And I remember the look on Archibald's face, and I remember the time that he stopped and accidentally dropped his stink bomb there in the church. Do you remember that?
Yes, he had a bodyguard, Mrs. Luper, and this big guy must have been 6'2", and it was the bodyguard who dropped the gun, and the gun went off, and everybody leaped up under the church pews and everywhere else. But that sanitation strike was perhaps Archibald's finest moment. He was fearless in the struggle for the sanitation workers, and without any doubt in my mind, that was absolutely his very finest moment. He gave the leadership to that strike and brought, of course, the strike brought the city to their knees, and we did not permit them to intimidate us by a line of demarcation. We proceeded to City Hall. We had the march on City Hall, and the strike successfully ended. That, again, is a symbol of his trait. He had great compassion for the least of us, and that to me is one of his greatest attributes. These were the dark days in Oklahoma's history. Archibald Hill was hated by many, misunderstood and underappreciated. Some concluded that he flaunted the American heritage with a suggestion of deep and rooted appreciation. But somehow, like the arrogance and egotism of which he is sometimes accused, he was courageous and determined to blaze new fields and open new doors for the oppressed. But then time marched on, and a young man from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who became an outstanding citizen in Tulsa, and who under the leadership of the Honorable Governor Dewey Bartlett became a judge. Today, I have with me Judge Charles L. Owens, a first in history. Judge Owens?
Yes.
So happy to have you as my guest today.
My pleasure.
I've invited you here because you knew Archibald Hill in a different way. And that is the Archibald Hill that I want you to tell me about.
Clara, just sitting here, I've noted 5 words. I jotted those down as I listened to you and Senator Porter reminisce about Archibald Hill. I just noted those on a little piece of paper here. I wrote the words confidence, courage, faith, friendship, and love. Those would have been the things that I would have addressed my remarks to here today, and I note that you have been impressed by those same attributes in Archibald. I think perhaps this could all be summed up in what Archibald said and did in what, as it turned out, were his final hours on this earth. on Friday of last week when I found out he was in the hospital. I, of course, immediately called the hospital, and I expected, of course, to get his wife, Lovey, or someone. I didn't ever expect to talk to him necessarily, but he answered the phone in his room to my great surprise, and after kidding around a little while, I chatted with him, and he completely turned the whole thing around. I had called to give him some words, I hoped, of encouragement, and instead I found that he was assuring me. He said specifically he expected to be out in a week or less, and he wanted me to assure others that he would be out. I asked, could I do anything at the courthouse for him? But he assured me it would not be necessary if he knew where to find me if he needed me. But he'd be out to take care of it himself. I think those things sum up what are two very fine traits of this man. That is supreme confidence and courage, supreme friendship, love, and that's what all the friends and relatives at his home at this very moment have been saying for the past 2 days. I've been there with him, going back immediately when I leave here, and that's what they've been saying. He leaves a great legacy, as Senator Porter has said. He leaves living witnesses to these characteristics. I only hope when I reach, as I inevitably must do, all of us, this same point, that I'll leave half the number of persons to attest to such characteristics in me.
Judge, when you became the first judge in Oklahoma County, I mean the first black one, what did Archibald Hill say to you?
He, of course, assured me that he didn't, that he knew that I would do a good job, not that he hoped. He knew I would. Looking back, reflecting back now, I'm sure that was his purpose. Not to say he hoped I'd do a good job, but to just tell me he expected it of me. He knew I would. And, of course, I took great encouragement from that, and I hope I've done some of the things that he hoped I would be.
This is KAEZ Radio here in Oklahoma City. It's 7 o'clock in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And today is a lesson in history, a lesson in American history, the story of Archibald Hill Jr. And I have with me a young man who too is destined to make history. He is the sheriff of Oklahoma County. And I hope I'm right. My attorney is here, and the judge is here, and the sheriff is here. Sheriff, I invited you here today because I wanted to talk about what you had done as a sheriff in Oklahoma County. But because of the death of Archibald Hill, I'm going to change. And I want you to tell me and this radio audience what you knew and what you thought about Archibald Hill.
Well, Ms. Luper, some years back, of course, I had the pleasure of being on opposite sides, you might say, being a police officer, and on many cases, Mr. Hill was the defense attorney, and I found him to be a diligent defense attorney with his client's utmost interest in his heart at all times. In fact, just in the past 2 weeks, I've had the pleasure of dealing with Mr. Hill. He had a client in the Oklahoma County Jail, and he came by and visited with me and told me about a problem that had arisen in regards to his client. Mr. Hill was friendly and cordial, and we spoke briefly. He was very gentlemanly, and he commented he'd appreciate anything that I could do for him. I told Mr. Hill that I would take care of the problem, which I did, and he was gracious enough to call me the next day and tell me that the problem had been taken care of, and he appreciated it. And this was less than 10 days ago. And of course, it was very surprising to me to learn of Mr. Hill's death, and I'm sure that the people of Oklahoma City and the people that he supported and fought so hard for will miss Mr. Hill.
Attorney Hill spoke very affectionately about the progress that you had made as it related to minorities in your office. Would you share that with me?
Well, when I came into office, of course, we were under a mandate to upgrade and professionalize the sheriff's office. We initiated quite a few programs, mainly patrol detail, and I think the most important aspect of our new program was the court detail. And I think you visited me in my office, and at which time we briefly talked about hiring minorities. And I think I made the comment to you that we had a supplement to the budget that would probably let us hire about 10 men, and that we would hire the minorities that you sent to us or that had applied if they qualified for the position.
I also told you that I had no confidence in you.
Yes, ma'am, I think you did at that time. Well, when I did get supplement to the budget, we checked the applications, and the result, we did find 3 of the finest young blacks that I think we could find in Oklahoma County. We hired these young people, and they were assigned as deputies Oklahoma County court detail. We had another black officer, Leon Pons, in the office that had been with the sheriff's office for approximately 18, 19 years. And in searching for someone to lead this court detail, which consisted of about 12 people, and somebody to train these people, and somebody with regard for the judges, and with a very gentlemanly manner, and we felt like that we could handle the particular new program we had started, I selected Leon Pons. I promoted him to sergeant, and he's done a very effective job in this position.
Senator Porter, were you aware, like Archie, of the fact that Sheriff Sharp had promoted black people in the office?
Yes, I was, Mrs. Luper, and I think it was either Thursday or Friday. I went by the sheriff's office. He was not there, and I talked to his secretary. And I tell you, nothing in the world makes my heart any prouder than to see the fine, good-looking, handsome young men, intelligent young men that he has employed who work with the sheriff's detail to the courtroom. And again, nothing caused me any deeper sense of satisfaction than to see Leon Pons elevated up in the ranks with the sheriff's department. And he had says these difficult days, which many places don't do, that affirmative policy of making sure that the sheriff's office is representative of all of the people in this county. And I want to tell you that I'm proud of you. And I also want to tell you that Mrs. Luper, I remember when Mrs. Luper was in your office, and we have visited many times since then, and there's not any doubt in my mind, and she can speak for herself, that confidence has been placed in her heart, because the proof of the pudding is what you've done in the sense of employment of opportunities to black citizens and elevation of black citizens to positions of responsibility.
I certainly am the type of person that will apologize. And when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I did not have the confidence in Mr. Sharp that he would do it. I had been told by other sheriffs that they were going to do it, all to no avail. And today, in the presence of the most intelligent radio audience in the world, I would like to apologize to you, and I would like to say thank you. Not only that, tomorrow at 11:30, I would like for you to join the leadership history students of John Marshall High School at the Holiday Inn downtown for lunch. That's how much I appreciate what you have done. No wonder Archibald Hill stated that you had done a great job.
Thank you, Miss Luper, and I feel honored that you will invite me tomorrow with your students, and like I said, I'll be honored to be there, and I appreciate your comments, and along with Senator Porter's. Thank you very much.
Judge Owens, you are in the courthouse. You have blazed the tough road. You have seen the sheriff's office changed. Have you, like Archibald Hill and Senator E. Melvin Porter, been, I don't know what word to use, I don't know what word to use, really. Maybe I should say, have you been impressed with Sheriff Sharp?
Very much so, Clara. In fact, when I first walked in here today, Sheriff Sharp was seated in the waiting room there, and the first thing I told him was that I was very much impressed by what he had done by way of creating the courtroom detail. They're a very, very sharp group of young deputies led by Leon Pons. They are uniformed, very, very efficient. They are the ones who bring the prisoners to and back from the courtroom and sit with them during the trial. We didn't have this before Sheriff Sharp, nor did we have any representative number of blacks in that whole office. The sheriff's department, in my almost 14 years in the courthouse, has been now brought from the 17th century up to this century. Sheriff Sharp has, in just the short time he's been there, updated that office. He has employed a very representative number of blacks, and that is an office certainly that should have them. They deal with, I would say, 40% are better black people in serving processes and in his jails. So we certainly need to have, and do now have, happily, a representative group. I thank Sheriff Sharp for that.
Clara Luper, this is a Clara Luper radio show. Today's show is in memory of Archibald Hill Jr. Today, throughout the world, people are reading Behold the Walls by Clara Luper. And as they read Behold the Wall, they will see a picture of Archibald Hill Jr. on page 210. They will read about him throughout the book, and I would just like to read from page 232. And that was the day that I saw Archibald Hill standing with his freckles, which seemed to be more visible that day. He was immaculately dressed, and his high-heeled boots were shining so brightly that one could easily use them as mirrors. Westwood Barn was a whole mass of confusion that day. It was in the midst of policemen that were stationed in all directions, with a policeman hanging on some kind of mechanical device way up in the air. I looked up to see the police officer that had arrested me a few days before for blowing my horn between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. I still had the ticket in my pocket, but I looked up, and I saw that Dr. Dow, Archibald Hill, Roland Betts, and William C. Woodward were under arrest. I'm going to read that part because Archibald Hill will be a part of United States history. And today, as we pause to remember, I would like to hear from our young people. I have a young student here, Keith Carter, who today has changed. He's our sports reporter. But today we are listening as young people write about Archibald Hill. Here he is, Keith.
This week, we as youth lost a great part of Oklahoma's black history, because Mr. Archibald Hill Jr. died Friday night. Mr. Hill was a great person. He was a sensational person. He was a person that even if you only met him once, he left an impression for you on life. Mr. Hill, from what I've heard and learned, was a person that knew what to be done, what had to be done, and did it. He wanted to get all those possible youth and did. And today I'd like to dedicate its editorial to Mr. Archibald Hill Jr. And right now I'd like to tell the youth of the day that Mr. Hill was a great person. And we, as we go in life, should all use Mr. Hill as an example for our life. Because as they think people need to outline, our life needs an outline also. And Mr. Hill should be a part of that outline. Whenever we are fighting against great odds, we should just remember Mr. Hill and just keep on fighting on. Because whenever Mr. Hill met an obstacle, he didn't stop, he just kept on moving on. Mr. Hill, during his life, he not only moved obstacles, but he also opened doors for people. And the youth of the day should all try and should remember Mr. Hill. Because when he died, that left a hole in America's black history that'll never be filled. And as today, speaking for all the youth, young people of today, in sports and of Oklahoma, I would like to offer our sympathy to his family. And as today, I promise you that I'll never forget Mr. Hill. And I hope you will also. And as a memorial to Mr. Hill, I would like to recite this poem by Frederick Douglass. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom, yet depreciate aggregation, are men who want crops without prowling at the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it must be a physical one, or maybe both moral and physical. But there must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a dream, a demand, and never did, and it never will. Men may not get all they pay for in life, but they must certainly pay for all they get. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is Keith Carter.
Thank you, Keith, a voice from today's youth. Attorney Louis Barber knew Archibald Hill Jr. in a special way. And Archibald Hill today is being remembered by those that were close to him. Attorney Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. Luper. I met Archibald Hill right after arriving in Oklahoma City. I was a very new lawyer, not knowing too much about the the legal profession as far as litigation of cases are concerned. I talked with Mr. Hill on numerous occasions. I became his lawyer. I represented him on minor civil matters. As I reflect back, I see now that he didn't retain me to represent him, but he retained me to instill in me the courage and fortitude to serve the people of this country. In my relationship with him, I have been blessed. He has instilled in me things that I didn't know that I had in myself. He has helped me to foresee obstacles and then set about plans and means of how to combat the same. Archibald Hill is very dear to me. He's very close to me, as he is to many Oklahoma Cityans and people around the world. I can say that the civil rights litigation that I was probably too young to participate in, I am doing so today through cases involving race discrimination, solely because Mr. Hill has instilled in me and actually stated to me that I had an obligation to carry the load. There are many young Archibald Hills in Oklahoma City and around the world. As Senator Porter has stated, Darrell Hogue and Charles Evans, two young lawyers that he has given a chance. He has given me a chance. I intend to pass on what Archie passed on to me to other young attorneys. We are going to continue the struggle. We will not give up, and it doesn't matter what price that we have to pay. I am here because I love this man, and he meant so much to me, and he meant so much to the civil rights matters that are still quite prevalent, not only in the state of Oklahoma, but in the United States of America. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We have talked about Archibald Hill, the lawyer, the civil rights worker. We could talk about Archibald Hill, a devout Methodist. But the greatness of a man must be determined by the people that know him best, his family. Archibald has a very beautiful wife, Lovey, and 3 sons that were his pride and his joy. Judge Owens, would you tell me about the family?
I have been privileged, Clara, to view this family as very, very close friends since their children were mere babies, and to meet and know his sisters, his mother, and the other relatives of his. In knowing them, if you are around them just a very short while, you can readily see where Archibald's many traits that I've mentioned before come from. Those traits of confidence and courage and friendship and love are all exhibited by all of them. I've been around them again many times, and in the last 2 days almost completely. And again, you can see where those things come from. Archibald Hill, as everybody says, is a man of great courage. He was.
Okay, continue, because I want you to tell me about his sisters and his mother. Yes.
He again has his mother and 2 sisters. His mother from Atlanta, of course, and 1 sister, Maudette Twyman, from Atlanta. The other sister, Ernestine Chairs, from Detroit. 2 very fine, lovely, beautiful ladies, and his mother likewise. I have been a close friend of Archie's for many years, a neighbor. Certainly it's a difficult task to make these comments even here today. I shall sorely miss him, most assuredly.
His mother is one of the most beautiful women that I have ever met. When I wrote about Archie Hill in 1974, she said to me, "Thank you, Clara." When I told about him on radio during his lifetime, she said, "Thank you, Clara." And yesterday, as she came to Oklahoma City, she talked about that strange motherly feelings that she had on last Friday night. She talked about the closeness of a family and her son's love for boots. And she said that she just wanted to go into the closet and see the boots. And without Archie, And then the realization that her only son was no more. She related to me how she had seen her friend's son be buried in mother's earth. But now it was her son. And there are a lot of things that people do not understand, and one is the relationship between Senator E. Melvin Porter and Archibald Hill. Senator Porter, I know that you and Archibald Hill were fighters, because I remember having both of you on radio one time, and you were talking about Archie, and Archie was talking about you. You were just like two Trumanites.
Well, we were competitors, we were fellow lawyers, we were fellow legislators together, we were competitors in the political arena, we fought hard battles, we were very much alike. But beneath all of that, Mrs. Luper, we were friends. And I spent, I guess, about 3.5 or 4 hours with Archie last month in his office. And we reviewed our life together. And that's something that whatever differences we ever had, and we had our differences, we overcame them, and we always remained friends. And as I said, he was a tremendous personality, and he had a great impact on my life. He was a very compassionate person, and the thing that I admired about him the most, Archie had that feeling and that sense of compassion for the guy who had all the odds against him. And that, in my book, is what truly made him great, because that's where his heartbeat was, that's where his fight was, and that's where his compassion was. And he told me, as we sat in his office, about the conversation he had with little Archie, and how he scolded him about something, and what a great sense of satisfaction he had in being able to not only admonish his children, but also watch them grow and profit from that admonishment. And that's the trait of a great man. And I tell you, he'll be missed, and I'm better off for having known him. And I want to say this to his mother. We thank you for giving him to us through God. We thank you.
This is a Clara Luper radio show here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I know a large number of you would like to call here today, and I know you would like to share some memories of Archie Hill. I'm going to allow Mr. L.E. Richardson to do just that at this time. Mr. Richardson, hello?
Thank you, Mrs. Luper. A number of us can remember the early days of Archibald Hill. We were the first family that invited him to our home for dinner. And he mentioned quite often, if we had more people that would reach out and help newcomers, strangers, it would be a better place in which to live. I'm also pleased to hear Judge Owens say the kind words about Archibald Hill. Judge Owens was my friend before he was an attorney, before he came to Oklahoma City, and he was sincere in his statements. And if we will all learn to work together, we'll have a better place in which to live.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Life is just a highway. Some of us have the opportunity to travel 1 mile. Others travel more. Archibald Hill traveled 46 miles. And now, here's Onita with other death and funeral announcements.
Thank you, Clara. Raw Funeral Home announces the services are Mrs. Annie Mae Scott of 2100 Northeast 16th Terrace. Will be Monday at 1 p.m. in the chapel of the Raw Funeral Home. Temple Funeral Home announces the services are Mr. Willie Franklin of 414 Northeast 20th. Will be Tuesday at 11 a.m. in the chapel of the Temple Funeral Home. Temple announces the service of Mr. Amos C. Taylor of Oakland, California. Mr. Taylor is a son of Mrs. Lorraine Johnson of 2628 Northeast 21st Street. Mr. Taylor's funeral services will be Monday at 11 a.m. in the Church of the Living God of 2517 North Bryant. McKay announces the funeral services of Mr. Elbert Keaton of 717 Northeast 5th. Will be Tuesday at 2 p.m. at the Tabernacle Baptist Church. Funeral service for Mr. Vincent Taylor of 4224 Northeast 18th will be Wednesday at 11 a.m. at the East Side Church of Christ. Funeral service for Mr. Carl White of 1715 North Edwards will be Thursday at 1 p.m. at the Greater Cleves CME. And as Clara has said, the funeral services of Mr. Archibald Hill of 5705 Stonewall will be Tuesday at 11 a.m. at the Avery Chapel AME Church. As we extend our sympathy tonight to the families, we would like to say to you, God did not promise we would walk a flower-stressed path each day. But he did promise to walk beside us when the path grew rough on the way. But God did not promise us a life of ease, nor would we have it so. I know that I must bear some burdens if my soul will continue to grow. And so we walk on day by day. And before we're quite aware, half of our burden slips to God's shoulder, because thus we know he cares. Back to Clara.
Today's program has been in memory of Archibald Hill. And now, as we come within 5 minutes of closing this presentation, we have closing words in memory of Archibald Hill. Judge Owens.
In closing here, Clara, I could not help but think of, as I sat here, of the words of Shakespeare from his play Hamlet. They're very simple, but I think appropriate here. And he wrote, "He was a man. Take him for all in all. I shall not look upon his like again." Certainly that expresses my feelings here today. I don't believe we shall look upon the likes of Archibald Hill here in Oklahoma again.
This is Luper. I just thank God for giving me the opportunity for having known him, and to giving me the chance to work with him and to fellowship with him and to laugh with him, to fight with him, to share with him. As Judge Owens said, we'll never see his like again.
Well, I think as the young attorney said that spoke of Mr. Hill helping him, I think Mr. Hill's inspiration to other young attorneys will live on, and I certainly want to express my sorrow to his family and friends.
Miss Luper, things that come to my mind is the statement that Dr. Martin Luther King had made. It's not how long one lives, but how well one lives. And reflecting back over Archibald Hill, he lived his life, he was his own man, and he instilled that in a lot of young people.
47 years of courage, aspirations, and achievements will be laid to rest at Trice Hill Cemetery on Tuesday. It was somehow symbolic that his life would end on Friday. Friday, Calvary. Friday, Martin Luther King. Archibald Hill had a tired heart, worn out in the service of mankind. It is a tragedy of world travelers that they seldom see the peace for which they have worked. Archibald Hill will not be in his office anymore. He moved from office to office, beautiful offices, but he's gone to his final office. He has left for his 3 sons a legend of life, a legend of one who flew high over the shores of history, a victim of a segregated system, evidence of the old and should-be forgotten conflicts and cruelties. He flew in spirit far above. Archibald Hill knew the bitter taste of defeat and rejection. Now Archie is gone. He had an ultimate knowledge of the law. He was a man who lived his life well. He had tenacity. But as I write these closing words on Archie, I really hate to say goodbye to a friend, because friends are so hard to find. Just a memory of a friend. Just a memory of a friend. Oh, yes. Yesterday I stood out in the yard with friends, longtime friends. I saw the tears and I felt the impulse. And I wrote, oh, we shouldn't be crying. Rather, we should be thanking God that Archie traveled down life highway with us for 47 years. It's hard to say goodbye, Archie. But on Tuesday at 11 a.m., friends will gather at Avery Chapel AME Church, where Reverend Irvin will deliver the eulogy to say goodbye. And let me say to the people in Oklahoma, we shouldn't be crying. We should be ashamed because Archie asked us to register and vote, and we have failed to do it. He asked us to clean up our homes, and our yards are still unclean. But what we should do, we should cry for us who are doing nothing with our lives. This is Clara Luper saying, and I really hate to say goodbye to all of you, but I've got to say goodbye. And my final goodbye to Archie was on last Sunday. Who knows what the future will bring? Next Sunday, Clara Luper will be talking about a story that I shouldn't talk about. It will be the Tabernacle story, the story of the Tabernacle Baptist Church. I will also be talking about black elected officials, and don't you miss it. Clara Luper, KAEZ Radio, here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and to all of you, goodbye.